My name is Celeste Simmons. I'm 28 years old. Stop begging for attention. That's what my father said, champagne in hand, in front of 43 guests, the same week I graduated as valedictorian. That week, my parents threw a party with catered food and a banner hanging in the living room. None of it was for me. I left home that night. I didn't come back for 10 years. Then my sister, the golden child, the one the party was actually for, called me at 1 o'clock in the morning from a payphone. She was sobbing. Broke. Homeless. Her license revoked. What she confessed about our parents didn't just break my heart, it made my blood run cold. Before I go on, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story. Drop your city and local time in the comments, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Now let me take you back to June, 10 years ago. A house on Maple Ridge Drive. The week my family fell apart. I grew up in a 4-bedroom house just outside Milwaukee, Wisconsin, on a street where neighbors waved from their driveways and nobody locked their front doors. From the outside, we were the perfect family, Gerald and Diane Simmons, 2 daughters, 1 neatly trimmed lawn. My father managed a regional branch of an insurance company. He wore pressed khakis every day and shook hands like it was a competitive sport. My mother was a homemaker, active in the church women's group, always the first to bring a casserole when someone got sick. She kept the house spotless. She kept appearances spotless, too. My older sister, Monica, was 2 years ahead of me. She was tall, outgoing, effortlessly charming, the kind of person who walked into a room and instantly had everyone's attention. She played volleyball. She sang in the church choir. She laughed loudly and easily, and people adored her for it. I was the quiet one. I got straight A's. I shelved books at the public library after school. I ate dinner without being asked twice and cleaned my plate without being told. I thought that was enough. I thought if I stayed quiet and good long enough, they would eventually turn around and see me. I was wrong. There's one memory that still stands out. I was 14. I had just made the honor roll for the 6th straight semester. I printed the certificate and taped it to the refrigerator, right next to Monica's volleyball team photo and her choir award. The next morning, it was gone. I found it folded on the kitchen counter, tucked under a stack of coupons. When I asked my mother about it, she didn't even look up from her coffee. The fridge was getting cluttered, honey. Monica's photo stayed. At the time, I told myself it didn't mean anything. But that refrigerator door was a scoreboard I was never allowed to win. What I didn't realize then was that the game had been rigged from the start. By senior year, I had one goal, valedictorian. I took 5 AP classes. Most nights, I studied until 2 in the morning, hunched over my desk with a single lamp glowing beside a cold cup of tea. I worked 12 hours a week at the library to save money. I wrote scholarship essays during my lunch breaks. None of it was loud. None of it was noticed. That spring, the school counselor called me into her office and told me I had earned the highest GPA in my graduating class. I would be valedictorian. I would deliver the commencement speech. 700 people. My name printed in the program. I drove home that afternoon with the official letter resting on the passenger seat, and I swear the sunlight felt different. I placed the letter carefully on the kitchen table and waited for my parents to come home. My father walked in first. He passed right by it, picked up the mail, and set the stack directly on top of the envelope. My mother came in carrying groceries. I said, "Mom, I got something today. Can I show you?" She glanced at the table. "What is it, honey?" "I'm valedictorian. They want me to give the graduation speech." "Oh, that's nice, sweetie." She turned toward the refrigerator and began putting away the milk. "Have you started your speech? Maybe ask one of your teachers to help." That was it. I did ask a teacher, Mrs. Ruth Calloway, my AP English instructor. She was 62, sharp-eyed, with silver hair always pinned back and reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. She read my first draft at her desk after school, a red pen in her hand. When she finished, she set the pen down and looked at me over the rim of her glasses. Then she wrote one line at the bottom of the page in neat cursive. "I'm proud of you. Remember this feeling." I would need that line more than I ever imagined. Graduation week began on a Tuesday. That was the day the official valedictorian letter arrived by certified mail, a heavy cream envelope with the school seal embossed in gold. I left it propped against the fruit bowl on the kitchen counter, where someone would have to see it. Wednesday morning, Monica called home. She had been accepted to medical school. Within an hour, my mother had phoned 15 people. I could hear her from upstairs, pacing the living room, her voice bright and breathless. "Can you believe it? Our Monica." By noon, my father had ordered a banner online, white letters on navy blue, "Future Dr. Simmons." By Friday, the caterer was booked. Saturday was the party. 43 guests crowded into our backyard, aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors, friends from church. My father had rented a folding table just for desserts. My mother wore a new blouse. Champagne flutes covered every surface, and a sheet cake sat in the center of the table with Monica's name written in lavender frosting. I came home from my library shift at 4 o'clock. I could hear the noise from the driveway. I sat in my car for a moment, my graduation gown folded neatly in the back seat, and told myself, just go in. Be happy for her. Maybe someone will ask. No one asked. I moved through that party like a ghost. I refilled chip bowls. I smiled at my Aunt Linda. I said, "Congratulations to Monica," and I meant it. I truly did. She gave me a quick sideways hug, already turning to greet someone else. At some point, I drifted back into the kitchen. And there, exactly where I had left it 4 days earlier, was the valedictorian letter. It was pinned beneath a stack of used paper plates, absorbing a damp ring of condensation from someone's glass. I picked it up. The gold seal was smudged. Something inside me shifted. I walked back outside holding the letter. The yard was crowded. People clustered around the dessert table, laughing, balancing paper plates. My father stood by the grill with his arm around Monica, explaining the acceptance rate at her medical school. My mother was pouring champagne. I approached my mother first. I gently touched her arm and kept my voice low. "Mom, I have some news too. I'm valedictorian." She glanced at me and gave a quick smile. "Oh, right. That's great, honey." Then she turned back to the champagne bottle and topped off a guest's glass. I stood there for 10 seconds. Maybe 15. Then I tried again, louder this time. Loud enough for the small group near the patio to hear. "I also graduated this week. I'm giving the valedictorian speech on Monday." The yard didn't fall silent all at once. The quiet spread in a ripple. A few heads turned. Aunt Patricia, my mother's younger sister, looked up from her plate. Monica glanced in my direction. My father set down his drink. He looked straight at me. His voice didn't rise. It didn't have to. At normal volume, it cut cleanly. "Celeste, stop begging for attention. Not everything is about you. This is your sister's night." 43 people heard it. No one said a word. Aunt Patricia stared at her shoes. My uncle cleared his throat. Monica let out a short, uncomfortable laugh and turned back to the person beside her. My mother refilled another glass as if I hadn't spoken at all. I walked through the kitchen, out the front door, and back to my car. I sat in the driver's seat in that driveway for 15 minutes. I didn't start the engine. I just sat there, holding a smudged letter, breathing. That was the last time I cried over my family. Sitting in that car, I made a decision. I would never again give anyone the power to make me feel invisible. But 10 years later, I would learn that what my parents took from me that night was nothing compared to what they had been taking all along. Monday arrived, graduation day. I put on my cap and gown alone in my bedroom. I checked my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Then I drove to the school by myself. The auditorium held 700 people. I know because I counted the rows while I waited backstage. Families streamed in, mothers clutching cameras, fathers adjusting ties, grandparents saving seats with folded programs. Fathers saving seats. Siblings fidgeting in the back rows. I watched them from behind the curtain and felt something hollow settle in my chest. When they called my name, I walked to the podium. The stage lights were warm against my face. The microphone gave a soft hum as I adjusted it. I delivered the speech I had worked on for 6 weeks, about perseverance, about proving yourself when no one is watching, about the quiet dignity of showing up even when no one applauds. 700 people applauded. I looked toward row 4, seats 7 through 10, the ones I had reserved for my family. All 4 were empty. But in row 3, just off the center aisle, one person stood. Mrs. Ruth Calloway. She was clapping hard, both hands raised, her eyes shining behind those familiar glasses. After the ceremony, she found me in the crowd. She didn't say much. She simply handed me a small pale blue envelope with her handwriting on the front. Inside was a card with one line written neatly across it. Your parents' blindness is not your failure. Go build your life. Behind the card was a business card for a scholarship coordinator at the University of Minnesota. I kept both. I still have them. That summer, I applied. I got the scholarship. I packed 2 suitcases and drove to Minneapolis. I didn't tell my parents I was leaving. I didn't tell them where I was going. The house on Maple Ridge Drive grew smaller in my rearview mirror until it disappeared completely. And I made myself a promise, I would not look back. What I didn't know was that the moment I left, my parents began doing something I should have discovered much, much sooner. Minneapolis was a fresh start. I moved into a shared apartment near campus with 2 roommates I found on a bulletin board. I worked part-time at a financial services office, filing paperwork, entering data, answering phones. I ate ramen 4 nights a week and tracked every dollar I spent. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Sophomore year, I applied for my first place on my own, a small 1-bedroom apartment in Uptown. Nothing fancy. Just somewhere I could close the door and study in silence. I filled out the application, submitted my pay stubs, and waited. 3 days later, the property manager called. I'm sorry, Miss Simmons. Your application has been declined. I blinked. Why? Your credit history shows some irregularities. I can't go into specifics, but I'd recommend pulling your full credit report. I hung up and sat on the edge of my bed, confused. I had no debt. No credit cards. I had never borrowed money from anyone. I had been careful with every dollar my entire life. I told myself it had to be a mistake, maybe someone with the same last name. I was 20 years old and drowning in coursework. I didn't have the time or energy to chase paperwork and dispute errors. So I let it go. I found another apartment, a cheaper one. No credit check required. And I moved on. That was my first mistake. I just didn't understand it yet. Every few months, my mother would call. She always sounded the same, slightly wounded, slightly breathless, as if she were reading from a script she had practiced in front of the bathroom mirror. Celeste, honey, I don't know what we did wrong. Your father cries at night. We just want our family back. Every time, my stomach tightened. Every time, a small voice inside me whispered, maybe you're the problem. Maybe you're being selfish. Maybe you should go home. I never went home. But the guilt followed me to Minneapolis like a shadow I couldn't shake. I graduated from the University of Minnesota with honors, a finance degree, and 3 job offers before commencement. I accepted the best one, a junior analyst position at a mid-sized financial consulting firm downtown. Within 2 years, I was promoted. Within 4, I became a senior financial analyst, reporting directly to the managing partner. My boss, Margaret Thornton, was in her early 50s, no nonsense, sharp, the kind of woman who wore reading glasses on a silver chain and remembered every number she'd ever seen. One morning, she called me into her office. "Celeste, you're one of the sharpest minds I've hired in 15 years. Keep going." I thanked her, then returned to my desk and stared at my computer screen for a long time. By 26, I had my own apartment, a reliable car, and a steadily growing savings account. I was building something solid. On paper, my life looked like a success story. But every Christmas, I sat alone. I would cook something simple, roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, a glass of wine. I'd watch the snow fall over Minneapolis and think about the house on Maple Ridge Drive. Not with longing, exactly. More like pressing on a bruise just to see if it still hurts. It always hurt a little. I hadn't spoken to Monica once in all those years. Whenever her name crossed my mind, I saw the same image, the backyard party, 43 guests, and my sister turning away with that short, uncomfortable laugh. She didn't defend me. She chose their side. At least, that's what I believed. I built a life that looked nothing like the one I grew up in, and I told myself that was enough. But there's a difference between enough and whole. I wouldn't learn that distinction until a payphone rang on a winter night and tore open everything I thought I had buried. It was a Thursday in February, 10 years after the party. I was sitting on my couch with my laptop open, reviewing a quarterly report. The apartment was quiet. Snow tapped softly against the window. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. Unknown number. Area code 507. I almost didn't answer. I usually let unknown numbers go to voicemail. But something, instinct, maybe, or just the lateness of the hour, made me answer. "Hello?" There was ragged breathing on the other end. Then a voice, cracked and soaked in tears, barely holding itself together. "Celeste, it's Monica. Please don't hang up." My hand tightened around the phone. I hadn't heard my sister's voice in 10 years. But this wasn't the Monica I remembered, the confident, polished golden child in a white coat. This voice belonged to someone unraveling. "Where are you?" I asked. "Bus station. Rochester. Rochester, Minnesota?" "Yes." "Why are you at a bus station at 11 at night?" A shaky breath. My phone got cut off. "I don't have money for a hotel. I found a payphone." I stood and walked to the window. The snow was falling harder now. "Why aren't you at Mom and Dad's?" Silence. Long enough that I pulled the phone away to check if the call had dropped. Then, very quietly, she said, "They kicked me out 3 months ago." I set my laptop on the counter and leaned against the kitchen wall. The words didn't make sense. Not at first. Monica was the favorite. Monica was the banner in the backyard, the champagne toast, the future Dr. Simmons. Monica was the daughter they chose. What happened? I asked. I can't explain everything over the phone. I just need somewhere to go tonight. Please. Her voice broke on the last word. I didn't know yet what she was about to tell me. I didn't know that her next sentences would make me sink down onto my kitchen floor. But something in the way she said, "Please, Celeste," like it was the last word she had left, told me this wasn't just a bad night. This was the beginning of something that would change everything. "Stay where you are," I told her. She kept talking while I pulled on my coat, not in full sentences, but in fragments, like someone sifting through rubble. She had lost her medical license 6 months earlier. A prescribing error. Wrong dosage. Wrong patient chart. The hospital launched an internal review. The state medical board opened an investigation. Within 8 weeks, her license was suspended. 2 months later, it was revoked. I was working 80-hour weeks, she said, her voice flat now, hollowed out. I was so tired I couldn't see straight. I made a mistake. I pulled on my boots and grabbed my keys. "Did you tell Mom and Dad?" "They found out before I did." Someone from church knew someone on the hospital board. Dad called me before the official letter even arrived. What did he say? She let out a short, brittle laugh. You know what he said. You know exactly what he said. I did. But I needed to hear it. He said, "You've humiliated this family." I locked my front door behind me. The cold air hit my face. And Mom? Mom didn't say anything. She just stood behind him and cried. Like she always does. After her license was revoked, Monica couldn't afford her rent. She moved back into the house on Maple Ridge Drive, temporarily, she thought. But 2 weeks later, Gerald told her she had to leave. People are talking, he said. We told the church you're traveling abroad. So they hid her. And when they couldn't hide her anymore, they erased her. And when hiding her became inconvenient, they discarded her. They loved me as long as I was useful, Celeste, she said, her voice cracking again. The second I wasn't, I became you. That sentence landed somewhere deep in my chest. I didn't respond. I just started the car and pulled out of my parking space into the falling snow. But that wasn't the worst part. Monica told me about the desk. When Gerald ordered her to leave, she packed what she could. On her last night in the house, she went into our father's home office, the one room we were never allowed to enter as children. She was looking for her birth certificate. Instead, she found a manila folder tucked in the back of the bottom drawer, hidden behind old tax returns. It was filled with printed emails, she said. Emails between Mom and Dad going back 12 years. I was on the highway now, snow streaking through my headlights, the wipers keeping a steady rhythm. What kind of emails? I asked. About us, Celeste. About keeping us apart. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. She recited fragments from memory. Dad to Mom, dated the year I left. If they talk too much, they'll compare notes. We can't let that happen. Mom to Dad, 2 years later, tell Monica that Celeste didn't want to come for Christmas. I'll tell Celeste that Monica is too busy. Year after year. Holiday after holiday. Birthday after birthday. 2 separate lies told in 2 separate directions, carefully designed to keep 2 sisters from ever sitting in the same room long enough to realize the truth. 12 years, Monica whispered. For 12 years, they made me believe you didn't care about me. And they made you believe I looked down on you. The highway was empty, just my headlights cutting through the snow. They played us like chess pieces, Celeste, she said. And we didn't even know we were on the same board. I drove in silence for a full minute. Was there anything else in that folder? I finally asked. Her voice changed. It grew smaller. More careful. Yes. And it has to do with money. My hands were steady on the wheel. My heart wasn't. Monica told me about the other documents. Behind the emails, in a separate plastic sleeve, were photocopies of credit card applications. 5 of them. 3 in my name. 2 in hers. Each one opened within months of our 18th birthdays. Each one signed in handwriting that wasn't ours. I have never opened a credit card in my life, Monica said. I didn't even know these existed until I pulled them out of that drawer. I merged onto the exit ramp toward Rochester. The green glow of the bus station sign appeared in the distance. What were they used for? I asked. Tuition. Car payments. The kitchen remodel. That new roof they put on 2 years ago. She paused. And the party, Celeste. The caterer. The champagne. The banner. All of it went on a card with your name on it. The total debt across all 5 accounts was over $110,000, split between 2 daughters who had never signed a single form. I thought about my sophomore year. The apartment application. The property manager's voice, your credit history shows some irregularities. I had told myself it was a system error. I had told myself it was nothing. It wasn't nothing. That's why my credit was flagged, I said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Monica replied softly. That's why. I pulled into the Rochester bus station parking lot. Through the glass doors, I could see a figure sitting under fluorescent lights on a hard plastic chair. A small suitcase rested beside her. Her head was bowed. I turned off the engine. The wipers stopped. Snow began piling up on the windshield. Monica.
Yeah.
Do you still have those papers? I photographed everything. I brought the originals. I sat there for a moment. Then I opened the door and stepped into the cold. They hadn't just ignored me. They hadn't just chosen Monica over me. They had used my name, my identity, to build a life I was never invited into. And they had done the same thing to her. She looked different. The Monica I remembered stood tall, polished, bright-eyed, the kind of confidence that entered a room before she did. The woman sitting in that bus station was thinner, her cheeks hollow. She wore a coat too light for a Minnesota February. Her hair was pulled back into a loose knot that looked days old. She stood when she saw me. We stared at each other across the fluorescent-lit waiting area. 10 years. 10 years of silence built on lies neither of us had chosen. I wasn't ready to hug her. But I held the door open. Get in the car. She picked up her suitcase. It was small, the kind you pack for a weekend, not for the collapse of your life. As she walked past me, I caught the faint smell of stale coffee and bus exhaust. We drove in silence for the first 5 minutes. I kept my eyes on the road. She stared out the window. Then, very quietly, she said, "I'm sorry about the party, Celeste." I should have said something. I didn't answer right away. I let the words rest between us while the highway hummed beneath the tires. "You're staying at my place," I said finally. "As long as you need." She nodded. Her eyes were wet, but she didn't cry. "But tomorrow morning," I continued, "we're calling a lawyer." A lawyer? What they did isn't just wrong, Monica. It's a crime. And if we want those accounts off our names, we have to report it. She pressed her forehead against the window. Outside, the snowfall was beginning to slow. "There are parents," she whispered. "I know." I didn't say anything else. I didn't have to. She understood. The folder sat inside her suitcase in the back seat. Those papers, the forged signatures, the stolen names, were about to change everything. And our parents had no idea the evidence still existed. The next morning, Monica and I sat at my kitchen table. My laptop was open. She sat beside me, silent. I pulled my full credit report. All 3 bureaus at Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. It took 4 minutes to load. Those 4 minutes felt like the longest of my life. 3 accounts I had never opened. 3 credit cards, each tied to a Milwaukee billing address. The house on Maple Ridge Drive. All opened in August. 10 years ago. The same month I left for Minneapolis. Total outstanding balance under my name, $67,000. The contact phone number listed on every application was my mother's cell phone. Monica ran her report next. 2 accounts. $48,000. Same address. Same phone number. Same forged signatures. I stared at the screen. $67,000. A number that had been attached to my name for a decade while I ate ramen, worked double shifts, and got denied apartments I should have qualified for. "I need to make a call," I said. A colleague at the firm had once mentioned a lawyer who handled fraud cases. I found his business card in my desk drawer. James Whitford. Attorney at law. Consumer fraud and identity theft. I called at 9 sharp. His assistant transferred me in under a minute. I laid out the facts, the accounts, the forged signatures, the timeline. I kept my voice steady. I gave him the numbers. When I finished, there were 3 seconds of silence. Then James Whitford said carefully, "This is federal. This is identity theft under 18 U.S.C. a Section 1028. Each forged application is a separate count. I looked at Monica. She was gripping her coffee mug with both hands, her knuckles white. Whitford continued, if you want these debts removed from your credit, you'll need to file a formal report, an FTC identity theft affidavit and a police report. And that means naming the perpetrators. He paused. Your parents. 2 days later, my phone rang during lunch. Monica's name lit up the screen, which meant she was using the phone I had lent her. She was calling from my apartment. Her voice was tight. Dad just called. He knows you're there? No. He called your number. It's the one I answered last time. I set my fork down. What did he say? He wants me to come home. He says Mom is sick. Is she? She's not sick, Celeste. She has acid reflux. She's had it for 15 years. I almost smiled. Did he say anything else? I put him on speaker, Monica said quietly. He said, she took a breath. He said, don't contact Celeste. That girl will only make things worse. She's always been jealous of you. I was sitting in the break room at my office. 2 colleagues were at the next table, eating sandwiches and discussing a client meeting. Normal life. 3 feet away. And my father was still rewriting the story. And there I was, 200 miles away, listening to my father lie about me to my sister all over again. There's more, Monica said. He told me that if I don't come back, he'll call the police and report that I stole items from the house when I moved out. My jaw tightened. What items? He didn't say. But we both know what he's talking about. The folder. The emails. The credit card applications. The proof. Our father wasn't worried about stolen property. He was worried about stolen evidence. He just didn't know Monica had already shown it to me. He didn't know a lawyer had already reviewed it. And he had no idea the documents he was trying to recover were the very ones that could land him in a federal courtroom. Don't call him back, I said. Don't engage. Let Whitford handle it. I hung up and stared down at my lunch. I wasn't hungry anymore. The next day, it was my mother's turn. I was at my desk when the call came in. Milwaukee area code. I knew before I answered. Celeste, honey. Her voice was thin and trembling, the way it always became when she wanted something. I've been so worried about you. I don't understand why you and your sister are pulling away from us. Your father and I love you both so much. I let her finish. Then I asked, calmly, Mom, did you open any credit card accounts under my name? Silence. Not the brief kind. The kind with weight. What are you talking about? 3 credit cards. My name. Your phone number listed on the applications. Opened 10 years ago. More silence. Then her voice shifted, higher, tighter, wounded. Are you accusing me? After everything I've done for you? I raised you, Celeste. I fed you. I drove you to school every morning. And now you're calling me a thief? I'm not accusing you, Mom. I'm asking. And you haven't said no. I could hear her breathing, fast, shallow. Then the tears came. I can't believe this. I can't believe my own daughter would say something like this to me. Your father was right. You've always resented this family. You've always wanted to tear us apart. Her voice cracked in all the right places. She'd had decades of practice. Mom, I'm done. Celeste. I'm done trying. The line went dead. I placed my phone face down on my desk and sat very still for a moment. Then I opened my email and began drafting a message to Whitford. She never denied it. Not once. She cried. She deflected. She accused. She performed. But she never said no. That told me everything. 2 weeks passed. I started to believe the worst was behind us. I was wrong. My phone rang on a Tuesday evening. It was Mrs. Calloway. "Celeste, I need to tell you something. And I'm sorry to be the one." She didn't sound sorry. She sounded furious. "Your parents spoke at the church fellowship meeting last Sunday. About 30 people were there. Your father stood up during open sharing and told the group that you've been, and I'm quoting, manipulating Monica into cutting off the family. He said you've always been jealous and that you're using her breakdown to turn her against them." I closed my eyes as I listened. Your mother sat beside him and cried the entire time. She told everyone she hasn't slept in weeks. I could picture it perfectly, Gerald standing tall, voice steady, playing the grieving patriarch, and Diane beside him with a tissue in hand, shoulders trembling on cue. The two of them performing heartbreak for an audience of 30, just like they had performed the image of a perfect family for 43 guests at that backyard party a decade ago. Some of the church members messaged me afterward, Ruth continued. They wanted your contact information so they could tell you, and I quote, "You should be ashamed." 2 texts came through while we were still on the phone. One was from a woman I vaguely remembered from childhood Sunday school, "How dare you do this to your parents?" The other was from a man I couldn't even place, "Your mother is a saint. You're breaking her heart." Monica sat across the room reading over my shoulder. Neither of us said a word. Ruth's voice steadied. "Celeste, I've known your parents for 20 years. I've also known you. The truth always comes out. Don't let them rewrite your story." I nodded even though she couldn't see me. When the call ended, I picked up my phone and dialed James Whitford. "I'm ready to file," I said. "All of it." He paused before asking, "Are you certain?" "Once we file, there will be a federal investigation. Your parents will know." I didn't hesitate. "I'm certain." Have you ever had someone twist the truth about you in front of people you cared about? Have you ever been cast as the villain in your own story? If this feels familiar, imagine what it's like to watch your own parents do it publicly. That was the moment things began to unravel for them, and they never saw it coming. James Whitford's office was on the 7th floor of a glass building in downtown Minneapolis, all clean lines and quiet hallways, the kind of place where serious decisions are made without anyone raising their voice. Monica and I sat across from him at a long conference table. Spread out between us were 3 credit reports, photocopies of 5 forged applications, a stack of printed emails, and a timeline I had written by hand on a legal pad. Whitford carefully arranged the documents and studied them one by one, turning each page slowly and making notes in the margins with a silver pen. He didn't rush. The credit card applications were clearly signed by someone other than the account holders. He said the contact information on every form belongs to your mother. The billing address listed is your parents' home, and the charges line up with tuition payments, vehicle purchases, and home renovation expenses that directly benefited them. He looked up at us and spoke evenly. This is identity theft under 18 U.S.C. Section 1028. Each fraudulent application is a separate federal offense. Combined with the forged signatures, we're also looking at fraud and potentially wire fraud, depending on how the applications were submitted. Monica shifted in her chair. I could feel her hesitation because I felt it too. These weren't strangers we were discussing. These were the people who drove us to school, who sat at the head of the Thanksgiving table, who told us they loved us, even when their actions said otherwise. But if we want the debts removed, I said quietly, this is the only option. Correct, Whitford replied. The credit bureaus require either a police report or an FTC identity theft affidavit to begin a dispute of this magnitude. There is no alternative process. He slid 2 affidavit forms across the table, one for me, one for Monica. I didn't sign that document out of anger or revenge. I signed it because my name had been used without my permission, and I had every legal right to reclaim it. Monica picked up the pen. Her hand hovered over the signature line for a moment, then she signed. 2 weeks after we filed, the ripple effects began. I didn't plan them. I didn't orchestrate anything. I went to work, came home, cooked dinner for Monica and myself, and followed Whitford's instructions. Don't contact your parents. Don't discuss the case publicly. Let the process unfold. But in a community as small as the one my parents had built their reputation in, the truth doesn't need a spokesperson. It only needs a crack in the wall. Ruth Calloway became that crack. She didn't gossip. She didn't post anything online. But when people asked, and they did, because Gerald's dramatic speech at the fellowship meeting had sparked conversations, she answered honestly. I've known Celeste since she was 14, she told Martha Greer, the church treasurer, over coffee. That girl has never been jealous of anyone. If Gerald and Diane want to talk about their daughters in front of the entire congregation, maybe they should tell the full story. Martha told her husband. Her husband mentioned it to the deacon. The deacon repeated it to someone else. And then Aunt Patricia called me. I hadn't heard her voice in 10 years, not since that party. She had been the one staring down at her shoes when my father told me to stop begging for attention. She had stayed silent then. She wasn't silent now. Celeste, I should have spoken up a long time ago, she said. I'm sorry. What do you mean, Aunt Patricia? There was a pause on the line. Then she continued softly, I overheard your father once, years ago. He was in the kitchen with your mother, and he said, she cleared her throat before repeating it. Open another one. Celeste never checks. I closed my eyes. I didn't understand what it meant at the time, she said softly. But I think I do now. And if you need someone to confirm who they really are behind closed doors, I'm here. The wall was starting to crack, and my parents still hadn't noticed. On the last Sunday of that month, Gerald and Diane walked into church the way they always did, side by side, chins lifted, Gerald's hand resting at the small of Diane's back. They took their usual seats in the front row. This time, though, the seats around them remained empty. People filed in, offering polite nods before choosing spots 2 or 3 rows behind. No one sat beside Gerald. No one leaned over to ask Diane how she was holding up. The fellowship that had once revolved around them quietly shifted, not with open hostility, but with unmistakable distance. Pastor Alan Marsh never mentioned names. He never did. But his sermon that morning centered on truth, accountability, and the sacred trust between parents and children. He quoted Proverbs. He spoke about the burden of deception carried within a household. Then he looked out at the congregation and said, a family built on secrecy will eventually be undone by the very secrets it keeps. Gerald stared straight ahead, his jaw set tight. Diane pressed a tissue to her face. After the service, 3 couples, longtime friends who had attended that backyard party 10 years earlier, approached Gerald in the parking lot, Howard and Jean Dempsey, Frank and Louise Cole, and the Myers. Howard spoke first, his voice calm but firm. Gerald, we need to ask you something. Is it true you opened credit cards in your daughter's names? Gerald's expression didn't fall apart. It hardened. My family's business is my family's business. That's not a denial, Howard replied. Diane gripped Gerald's arm and steered him toward their car. She was crying, real tears this time, or perhaps the same practiced ones. It was becoming difficult to tell the difference. I wasn't there, but I didn't need to be. The truth doesn't require a microphone. It only takes one honest voice, then another, and another, until the silence can no longer hold. Gerald called me that evening. I was at the sink washing dishes when my phone vibrated against the counter, his name glowing on the screen. I hadn't seen it there in a decade. I dried my hands, picked up the phone, and answered. Celeste. His voice was different, quieter, stripped of its sharp edges. What remained sounded like a man standing in a room that was shrinking around him. You're destroying this family. You need to withdraw the complaint. I turned off the faucet. You opened accounts under my name. I didn't have a choice, he said quickly. That money went to Monica's tuition, to this family. I did it for us. You didn't do it for us, I replied. You did it for the image of us. I'll pay back every cent, he said desperately. Just withdraw the report. You opened 3 credit cards in my name when I was 18, I replied evenly. You forged my signature. You used my social security number. That's not a debt, Dad. That's a federal crime. His breathing grew heavier. I could hear him pacing on the other end of the line. Do you want to see your father go to prison? Is that what you want? I don't want anything from you, I said. I want my name back. There was a pause, and then I added, you told me to stop begging for attention, remember? At the party. In front of 43 people. So I stopped. I stopped asking you for anything. And now I'm not asking. I'm filing. Silence filled the space between us. Then, very quietly, and this was the part one hadn't expected, his voice broke. Please, Celeste. I'm sorry. I know I was wrong, but don't send me to prison. I stood in my kitchen, the phone pressed to my ear, and felt something I hadn't anticipated. Not satisfaction. Not triumph. Something closer to grief. Dad, I said softly, I'm not sending you to prison. You walked yourself there 10 years ago. I ended the call. My hands were steady, but something inside my chest wasn't. The weeks that followed were quiet in the way aftermaths are quiet, not peaceful, just still. Whitford sent updates by email. The FTC processed our affidavits. The Milwaukee Police Department opened an investigative file. The credit bureaus flagged all 5 fraudulent accounts and began formal disputes. The machinery of justice moved slowly and without drama, exactly as it should. I went to work every morning. I analyzed financial reports. I attended meetings. I drank coffee at my desk and watched the snow gradually melt outside my office window. None of my colleagues knew what was unfolding in my personal life, and I didn't need them to. One Wednesday afternoon, Margaret Thornton called me into her office. She stood behind her desk with her arms folded, her expression unreadable. Sit down, Celeste, she said. I sat. I'm nominating you for the Midwest Regional Financial Analyst Award. It's given to one analyst each year across the tri-state region. The selection committee reviews next month. I blinked. Thank you, Margaret. Don't thank me, she replied. You earned it. Your work on the Pendleton account alone would have qualified you, but your consistency over the last 4 years, that's what sealed it. She shook my hand, firm and brief, then returned to her paperwork as if she had simply announced the weather. I walked down the hallway toward my desk, but halfway there I stopped. I leaned back against the wall and took one long, steady breath. 10 years ago, I had stood in a parking lot crying because my father accused me of begging for attention. Now I was standing in a corporate hallway being told I was the best at what I do. Not because I begged. Not because I performed. But because I showed up every single day and did the work. I didn't need my father's approval anymore. I had something better. I had my own. She appeared on a Saturday morning without warning. No call. No message. I opened my front door to grab the newspaper and found Diane Simmons standing in the hallway. Her eyes were swollen, her coat wrinkled, as if she had driven all night. Celeste, she said, her voice trembling, please. We need to talk. I held the door open but didn't step aside. She stood on the threshold, half inside and half out, as if even now she couldn't decide which side she belonged on. Your father could go to prison, she said. Do you understand what that means? We could lose everything. You opened accounts in my name, Mom, I replied. You signed those applications. I didn't have a choice, she shot back quickly. Your father made me. From behind me, Monica's voice cut through the hallway. She stepped forward until she was standing beside me, her arms crossed. Diane's expression shifted instantly. She hadn't known Monica was there. Her eyes moved between us, her 2 daughters standing together for the first time in more than a decade, and something flickered behind them. It wasn't guilt. It was fear. Monica, sweetheart, don't, she pleaded. Monica's voice was calm, steadier than I'd ever heard it. I read the emails, Mom. All of them. Including the one where you told Dad, open another one. Celeste never checks. Diane's mouth opened, then closed. She tried again, but no words came out. You weren't forced, Monica continued. You participated. Every single time. Tears filled Diane's eyes. She looked at me, then at Monica, then back at me, searching for something, sympathy, perhaps, or weakness. Mom, I said evenly, I don't want you to go to prison. But I'm not carrying $67,000 in debt I didn't create. You have a choice. Cooperate with the lawyer, acknowledge what you did, and negotiate a resolution, or wait for federal investigators to come to you. She stared at me, her lower lip trembling. Then she turned without another word, walked down the hallway, and disappeared down the stairs. Monica closed the door. We stood there in silence for a moment. She'll tell Dad, Monica said. I know. Then what? Then they decide, I answered. It's their choice now. Not ours. It took 3 weeks. Whitford called on a Friday afternoon while I was at my desk finishing a report. His name lit up on my screen. They've retained counsel, he said. Their attorney contacted me this morning. They want to negotiate. I leaned back in my chair. Outside my office window, the first hints of spring were beginning to soften the Minneapolis skyline. What are they offering? I asked. Full acknowledgement of the fraudulent accounts. Restitution of all outstanding balances, $115,000, including accrued interest, paid through a structured repayment plan. In exchange, they're requesting that you and Monica support a plea agreement instead of pursuing full federal prosecution. What does the plea involve? A guilty plea to identity theft. 3 years of supervised probation. A financial restraining order prohibiting them from accessing either of your personal information, credit, or financial accounts. No prison time. I thought about it, but not for long. Monica and I hadn't filed to send them to prison. We filed to reclaim our names. Then it achieves what we wanted, I said. Accept it. The paperwork took another month to finalize. Gerald and Diane Simmons entered guilty pleas in a federal courtroom in Milwaukee. There were no cameras, no spectators, just 2 attorneys, a judge, and 2 parents who had spent 20 years crafting the image of a perfect family, now signing documents that formally admitted it had all been a lie. The credit bureaus removed all 5 fraudulent accounts within 60 days. My credit score rose 190 points in 6 months. For the first time in my adult life, my financial identity truly belonged to me. I called the property management company in Uptown, the same one that had rejected my application 7 years earlier. I wasn't looking for an apartment. I just wanted to say one thing: the reason I had been denied back then was identity theft, and my record had now been corrected. The woman on the phone paused before apologizing. I didn't reclaim my name out of revenge. I reclaimed it because it was mine. That had always been enough. In a community like the one my parents had built their lives around, news didn't travel loudly. It moved slowly, through exchanged glances, through pauses in conversation, through the things people stopped saying. No one in the congregation held a formal meeting. No announcement was made. But within weeks of the plea agreement, the quiet shift that had begun that Sunday morning became permanent. Gerald and Diane stopped attending services. Not because they were asked to leave, or Reverend Marsh would never have done that, but because the space they had occupied for 25 years no longer felt like theirs. The front row seats remained empty for 3 Sundays before someone else finally filled them. Their longtime friends, the Dempseys, the Coles, the Myers, stopped calling. Not out of cruelty, but out of embarrassment. We believed them, Jean Dempsey told Aunt Patricia. For 10 years, we believed every word. Patricia kept me informed with short phone calls once a week. She didn't offer commentary, she simply told me what she observed. One evening in late spring she said, "Your father put the house on the market. They're using the equity to make the restitution payments. They're moving into a 2-bedroom rental on the south side. I sat quietly with that image, the house on Maple Ridge Drive, the neat lawn, the refrigerator once covered with Monica's photos, and my missing honor roll certificate. "How is he?" I asked, though I wasn't sure why. "Quieter," she replied. "Your mother too. They don't go out much." I thanked her and hung up, then stood at my kitchen window watching the trees on my street begin to bloom. He had spent his entire life building an image. In the end, the truth didn't tear it down, it simply turned on the lights, and the people around him finally saw what had always been there and chose to step back. Monica lived with me for 3 months. I won't pretend those months were simple. We were 2 women in our late 20s sharing a 1-bedroom apartment, carrying 20 years of damage we were only beginning to unpack. There were good nights, cooking dinner together, watching old movies, laughing harder than the scenes probably deserved. And there were difficult ones. One evening in March, I finally said what I had been holding on to since the party. "Why didn't you say anything that night when Dad told me to stop begging for attention? You just laughed." Monica set her fork down and stared at the table for a long time before answering. "Because I believed him," she said quietly. "I thought you were being dramatic. They had spent years telling me you resented me, that you were jealous, that you wanted to ruin every good thing that happened to me. And I believed it. All of it." She looked up at me, her expression steady but heavy. "For 10 years. For 10 years, I repeated. We sat there in silence while the heater clicked on and off in the corner. Finally she said, "I'm sorry, Celeste. I don't know how to make it right." "You don't have to make it right," I told her. "You just have to be honest." We both started therapy, separately, different offices, different therapists. Monica worked through the crushing pressure of being the golden child, the impossible expectations tied to a role she had never chosen for herself. I worked through the invisibility, the guilt, and the years I spent wondering whether I had somehow been the problem all along. In April, Monica found a job as a community health outreach coordinator at a nonprofit clinic. She used her medical training without needing a license. The salary was modest, but she didn't seem to care. "It's the first time in my life I'm working because I want to," she told me one evening as she laced up her sneakers for a walk. "Not because Dad needs a doctor in the family portrait." By May, she had moved into her own apartment 15 minutes from mine. Healing wasn't linear. Some nights we argued. Some nights we sat in silence. Both were part of the process. The awards ceremony took place at the Grand Marquette Hotel in downtown Minneapolis, a ballroom with tall windows, white tablecloths, and 200 professionals from financial firms across the Midwest. I wore a simple navy dress I had bought specifically for the occasion. I arrived alone, checked in at registration, and took my seat near the front. When I glanced toward the 3rd row just off the center aisle, I saw 2 faces that caught me off guard. Monica. And beside her, Ruth Calloway. Ruth had flown in from Milwaukee that morning on an $80 round-trip budget flight. She wore a gray blazer and her reading glasses hung from their silver chain. She sat with her hands folded neatly in her lap, just as she had at my graduation 10 years earlier. At 8:15, my name was called. I walked to the podium. The microphone hummed softly under the warm lights. 200 people looked up at me. I kept my speech brief. 10 years ago, someone told me I was begging for attention. I carried that sentence with me for a long time. Tonight, I'm not begging for anything. I'm standing here because I earned this. And I want to thank the people in this room, and a few who aren't, who saw that before I did. The room filled with applause. I looked toward the 3rd row. Monica was crying, but not the shattered, desperate tears from the bus station years earlier. These were quiet, steady tears, the kind that fall when something long lost is finally restored. And Ruth stood, raising both hands as she clapped, just as she had in that auditorium a decade ago when 700 people applauded and 4 reserved seats remained empty. After the ceremony, she found me near the coat check and wrapped me in a brief, firm hug. "You see," she said softly. "I told you. Remember this feeling. The same woman who stood for me at 18 stood for me again at 28. But this time, she wasn't alone. 6 months after the ceremony, a letter arrived. It wasn't an email or a phone call. It was a handwritten letter in a plain white envelope, postmarked Milwaukee. My father's handwriting covered the front, tight, slanted, the same careful penmanship he used on insurance forms throughout my childhood. I sat down on my couch and opened it. 2 pages, written in blue ink. He didn't begin with an apology. He began with an explanation, or something close to one. He wrote about growing up poor in a town where no one had anything, about dropping out during his first year of college because he couldn't afford tuition, about filing for bankruptcy at 30 and the shame that followed him like a second shadow. I thought if this family looked perfect, then maybe we would be, he wrote. I thought if people saw Monica in a white coat, they'd see me as something more than the man who went broke at 30. I was wrong. I built a house on lies and told myself it was love. Then he wrote something I hadn't expected. I know I was wrong about you, Celeste. I don't expect you to forgive me. I'm not asking for that. I just want you to know I see you. I should have seen you a long time ago. I see you now. It's late, but I see you. I read the letter twice. Then I folded it carefully, slipped it back into the envelope, and placed it in the top drawer of my nightstand. I didn't write back. I sat by the window for a long time instead, watching the sun set over Minneapolis, the sky streaked with copper and gray. I thought about the refrigerator on Maple Ridge Drive, my vanished certificate, the smudged gold seal beneath a stack of paper plates. He finally saw me, but I no longer needed him to. That's what 10 years changes. I didn't slam the door on my father that night, but I didn't open it either. I simply left it where it was, neither locked nor wide open. A boundary, not a wall. The difference matters. I'm 28 now. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment in Minneapolis with a small balcony that overlooks a row of elm trees. In the fall, they turn gold. In the spring, they cast the street in a soft green light that makes everything feel possible. My credit score is higher than it has ever been. I'm saving for a down payment on a house, one with my name on the deed and no one else's. I go to work every morning at a job I love, for a boss who calls me sharp instead of telling me I'm too much. Monica lives 15 minutes away. We have dinner together every Thursday, not because anyone insists, but because we want to. Sometimes we cook. Sometimes we order Thai food and eat it on the couch with a movie playing in the background. We don't talk about our parents every time, but when we do, we're honest. That's new for us. It's still hard. It's getting easier. Monica calls our father once a month. The conversations are short, polite, careful. She sets a timer on her phone, 15 minutes, no more. She says that's enough for her. I respect that. I don't judge it. Everyone draws the line where they need to. I don't call him, and I don't call my mother. The letter remains in the top drawer of my nightstand, still unanswered. Every Christmas, Ruth Calloway sends me a card. Last year she wrote, "Still proud. Always proud." I placed it on my refrigerator with a magnet, and this time, no one took it down. My family no longer looks like the one I grew up in. It's smaller and quieter, and it belongs entirely to me. There's a freedom in that, an imperfect, hard-earned kind of freedom. The kind you only find after you stop waiting for someone else to hand it to you. If you ask me what I've learned, and I know this is usually the part where people start to sound preachy, so I'll try not to, I would say this. First, if your family only loves you when you're useful to them, that isn't love. It's a transaction, and you're allowed to walk away from a deal you never agreed to. Second, setting a boundary isn't betrayal. It isn't cruelty or selfishness. It's the most basic act of self-respect a person can make. It's saying, this is where I end and where you begin. I spent 18 years without boundaries and 10 more learning how to build them. I wish someone had told me sooner that you don't need anyone's permission to protect yourself. Third, if you graduate at the top of your class and nobody throws you a party, throw your own. Buy yourself a cake, light a candle, and sit with it. You earned that moment, and no one else's silence can take it away from you. And fourth, this is the one that took me the longest to understand. If someone tells you to stop begging for attention when you're sharing something you're proud of, the problem isn't that you're too much. The problem is that they're offering too little, and that gap isn't yours to fix. I'm not here to tell you what to do with your family. I don't know your story, your parents, your siblings, or your history. But I do know this: the people who are supposed to love you shouldn't be the ones who make you feel invisible. And if they do, you're not obligated to stay in the room. Setting a boundary isn't abandoning your family, it's refusing to abandon yourself. That's what I learned the hard way over 10 years, and I would do it all again. I began this story with an 18-year-old girl sitting in a parked car in her parents' driveway, holding a smudged letter and crying in the dark while 43 people laughed and clinked glasses in the backyard behind her. I'm 28 now. I don't cry over them anymore, not because I don't feel anything. I feel everything. I feel the weight of what was lost and the relief of what was found. But I've learned the difference between tears that heal you and tears that keep you small. I don't waste mine on people who never earned them. My father once told me I was begging for attention. He was wrong. I wasn't begging for attention. I was asking to be seen by the people who were supposed to see me first. And when they refused, I learned how to see myself. This isn't a Hollywood ending. There's no dramatic courtroom showdown, no tearful family reunion on a quiet porch. Some stories don't end with a hug. Some stories end with a woman standing alone in her own apartment, pinning a card to her refrigerator and realizing for the first time that she is enough. If you're out there right now and you're the one your family forgot, the quiet one, the responsible one, the one who did everything right and still got overlooked, I see you. Your story matters. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. My dad once said I was begging for attention. He was wrong. I was asking to be seen, and now I see myself. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story meant something to you, leave a comment and tell me what boundary you set that changed your life. I read every single one. If you'd like to hear more stories like this, subscribe and check the description for our latest video. And remember, you don't need anyone's permission to be proud of who you are. I'll see you in the next one.